Welcome to another round of Prem and Proper here on SDH. We'll take you backward before we go forward and get you through the weekend. When it comes to the Premier League, it starts with Friday Night Football coming up later this afternoon, and we'll get you ready for that match. All the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, since we are getting closer to the Halloween schedule, part of the calendar. So instead of juice boxes, it'll be Reese's Peanut Butter Cups coming up in just a little bit. We'll get you all caught up with all of the scores and the news and the standings coming up here across the show. Plus 3D with Drew Dickinson and his diatribe. What's on his mind this week? He gives it to you in about 7 minutes. So we'll come up with that at the end of the show. All right, let's go backward before we go forward and let you know what's going on in the Premier League. Last time out, it was early action with Liverpool, the Park, and Everton. And so Liverpool wins 2-0 at a minus 250. As we come out of the international window, Liverpool gets a big win. One of the more interesting matches for various reasons, Nottingham Forest Luton Town ended up at a 2-2 draw at a plus 270. Newcastle put 4 on Crystal Palace as a big favorite at a minus 213. Manchester City, Roberto De Zerbi, where Pep Guardiola has said that, by the way, that dude, he's the next head coach for Manchester City, Roberto De Zerbi, a joy to watch. And Brighton did get a win in the midweek for the first time in European competition. Great stuff for the Seagulls, but they would lose to Manchester City by the final of 2-1. Brentford shuts out Burnley by the score of 3-0. Wolves in a back-and-forth beat Bournemouth in a game at the vitality that you would have thought that Bournemouth needs along the line to stay afloat in the Premier League this year. Brentford won at a minus 133. By the way, Manchester City at a minus 270. Wolves were a road dog at a plus 214. They got the win. Chelsea and Arsenal a 2-2 draw at a plus 231. Manchester United took them a while, but they beat Sheffield United by the final of 2-1 at Bramall Lane. And Paul Heckingbottom, we will discuss his future coming up in just a little bit as well. Manchester United was a minus 263 on the road. Villa on Sunday, the one match that was there, beat West Ham by the final of 4-1. Big day for Ollie Watkins. And then Monday Night Football, Spurs over Fulham by the final of 2-0 at a minus 196. So that sets up your standings after match week number 9 as we head into match week 10. And right now it's Spurs on top. No losses in their first 9 matches and 23 points. Manchester City is ahead of Arsenal on goal difference for the battle of 2 and 3. Liverpool is 4th at 20. Villa is at 19 points with a record of 6-1-2. Newcastle's at 16 points with a record of 5-1-3 well ahead of Brighton on goal difference. 15 points, Manchester United are in 8th. West Ham, 14 points, are in 9th. Chelsea ahead of Crystal Palace on goal difference for 10 and 11. Wolves with the win, they are 12th. Fulham is 13th. Brentford 2-4-3, still searching for a striker. We'll address the Ivan Toney situation coming up in news and notes and sound. They are at 10 points in 14th. Forest is at 15th. They're drawing their way through the schedule with a record of 2-4-3. Everton right now is at 7 points in 16th. Luton Town out of the relegation zone currently with 5 points with a record of 1-2-6. Relegation zone right now, Burnley at 4 points, Bournemouth at 3, Sheffield United is at 1 point through their first 9 matches. All right, let's get you into the sound for the week, starting off with the soccer special. Ivan Toney to Arsenal. Could it be a bargain basement thing? Don't know. Here's what the folks at Sky Sports News thought.
They've got Nketiah, who I think is a really good striker. But if Arsenal, because of the injuries he's picked, come January, I think they'll be looking for a centre forward. And I'll throw a name out there who they could go and get, who they might go and get. Ivan Toney. Watch this space.
But if they bring in another big-name striker, you look at the problems they've got with the goalkeeper situation. Do you have that at the top end of the pitch if you bring another top striker in?
Yeah, of course you do. But I think if you want to challenge Man City, you've got to bring someone. And as we say, we don't want the Jesus with these injuries that he is picking up at the moment. You're just thinking, can you rely on him? And obviously, we can rely on him because he's a top player on the pitch. But who can go and fill that void? Nketiah, can do it. But I just think you need competition for places anyway.
That's where you definitely need the competition in forward areas. The real game changers, people are going to make the difference in big games. Obviously, Toney would absolutely come into that category. And I think it just goes back to that goalkeeper situation, the money spent in the summer on Raya. you bring in Havertz. Rather than doing that, do you go and actually go, right, we're going to go and get a top level striker, Osherman, potentially, if he's available, use that money? Because for me, it's about that. You know, they're at a level where we've seen the development and the improvement in Arsenal, but what takes them to that next level, for me, is a top striker.
Well, you heard it first. Clinton says, watch this space with Ivan Toney.
I didn't say I know anything. I just said, like, he's a type of striker that when he comes back...
now.
No, listen, let me finish what I said. He's the type of striker a lot of those top teams will be looking at, because I think he's outstanding. He can do the lot. He can score goals. He leads from the front. And I think he'll be a good signing for Arsenal.
You should go into politics, Clinton.
I'm not bad at that at all. No, I haven't got a clue. Don't start. I haven't got a clue on that. Let's not get into that. Let's move on, Jules.
The Sandro Tonali situation, we are awaiting an actual answer. It has been spoken. It has not been written. So we'll see what happens with Sandro Tonali. Could be available for the Wolves match this weekend for Newcastle. Roy Hodgson, courtesy of Crystal Palace, their own selves, was asked about it, and he thought, obviously, it was a shame for the league and for the game.
And my opinions on gambling and its influence, not just on football but in the world today, and the damage it does, and this is just another example of it, really. I was shocked by the situation with Ivan Toney when it came out and he received the length of ban that he did. So now I suppose Tonali's ban being accused, if you like, or judged of committing the same crime, one is perhaps a bit less surprised. But 10 months is an incredible time, you know, to stop playing football for 1 year, basically, and then have to come back to it. For him, it's a tragedy, really, and for the club too. But that's where we are with betting at the moment, and I suppose any players who feel that maybe I can still get away with doing a bit of betting while I'm a footballer, maybe they should really start to think twice now after what we've seen happen to Ivan and to Sandro.
News out of Burnley. Lyle Foster is signed through 2028. Big part of the future for Vincent Kompany. Here is what Kompany said midweek at the press conference, once again courtesy of our friends at Burnley, their own selves.
Ask you about your news today about your striker signing a new contract, Lyle. How important is he going to be in the next few months if you're going to stay in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think it's clear. I mean, we're in a position now where, and as well, I think it's more, you know, he came in from a very small club before coming to us, and we believe he's going to be an important striker in the Premier League. And I think when you compare what the benchmarks are in the Premier League, I think that, you know, it was maybe a slight correction from our side, and also making sure that we could have him a little bit longer at the club. So we're really happy with that.
Settling in can often be difficult for a player coming in, especially 23 years of age. How impressed have you been with him?
Yeah, but you speak about settling in. We've got another 14 in the squad at the moment doing exactly that, and it took him 6 months. And but he's happy and he's performing well, and also it's not just what he's shown on the pitch; it's also what he's shown off the pitch. His character is dependable. He's hardworking. He's a player that's there for the team and also able to compete at this level. So I think it's good for the club.
Speaking of Burnley, it looks like ALK Partners, the current owners of Burnley, might be looking to add Dundee to their stacks of associated clubs. So we'll keep an eye on that. The Manchester United financials, record numbers, but are they record numbers? Once again, our friends at Sky Sports News caught up with Kaveh Solakal. He broke it all down.
Manchester United have released their latest financial results for the full fiscal year. We're joined now by Chief Reporter Kaveh Solakal to take a closer look at those results. Then, Kaveh, what stands out to you?
I think if you're the Glazer family, what will stand out is that these are record results for an English club. So the owners of Manchester United would say, look at our business, it's doing so well. Our revenue basically last season was a record £648 million. Now, I think we've got to be a little bit careful because clubs like Manchester City, for instance, who won the treble last season, haven't released their accounts yet. And I'm pretty sure that when they do, they will break the record that Manchester United have set today. And also, when you dig deeper into the accounts, you've got to when it's Manchester United, look at the debt and the non-current debt in dollars. That is the debt that is associated with the money the Glazers borrowed 18 years ago to buy the club. And if you look at the accounts, that debt is still $650 million, which in pounds is £507 million. And to service that debt last season cost Manchester United £21 million. Now, when it comes to revenue, the revenue has gone up 11%. Why has that gone up? If you look at the commercial revenue, that is up 17% because of new sponsorship agreements that the club have signed, and also because of the successful pre-season tour in the US. Broadcasting revenue is down a little bit, 2%. That is because United were playing in the Europa League and not the Champions League. Europa League, you don't get as much broadcast revenue. Match day revenue, though, was up 23%. Very good, making a lot more money on match days. Why is that? Because United had 7 more home games. One other really interesting thing is the wage bill. Now, United used to have the biggest wage bill in the Premier League. They don't anymore. The wage bill went down by about £50 million. And I think that is all to do, again, with the fact that United weren't in the Champions League. A lot of their players, in their contracts, it states that if they don't qualify for the Champions League, they have to take a wage cut. And also, Cristiano Ronaldo left the club as well midway through the season, so that saved them millions and millions on wages as well. The final point I would make is that there was a net loss. Manchester United during this fiscal year lost £42 million. So a mixed picture. You could either say, wow, these are great results, record revenues, but you could also look at it and say this is a business that lost money again and they have a big, big debt burden.
Yeah, it's amidst a lot of news about the potential sale as well, of course, a story that you've been covering for many, many months now. Is there anything that justifies the sort of fee or valuation that the Glazers were putting on the club?
Well, I think, there have been reports that the Glazers value Manchester United at up to £10 billion. I think most people you would speak to, if they looked at these accounts, would say this is not a business that is worth £10 billion. But what the Glazers would say is this is a business that in the future could be worth £10 billion. And there's a lot of information in the accounts about the record number of supporters United have all over the world, the biggest waiting lists for memberships, the amount of supporters clubs they have all around the world. It's undeniable that United are a big, big club, but it's also undeniable that they've been weighed down by the debt that the Glazer family loaded onto the club 18 years ago, and the debt that United have been servicing for 18 years.
Okay.
We mentioned Sandro Tonali and the situation. Here's the punishment as laid out by Keith Downey, standing in front of St. Mary's as he always does. He was sporting an umbrella in this particular case for his live shot. But here is what was said about the initial punishment before the idea that Tonali could be available, courtesy of our friends at Sky Sports.
Walk us through then the terms of this ban.
Yeah, it's the news that we have been expecting, that Sandro Tonali will miss the next 10 months of football worldwide, and we've had some confirmation from the Italian Football Federation over in Turin following the hearing that Sandro Tonali attended last week. As I say, it's a 10-month ban from football, which will take the Italian international up until almost the end of August next year, meaning he'll miss the remainder of this season. The Euros at the end of the season should Italy qualify, pre-season training as well, and probably the first couple of matches of the 2024-2025 season. Now, to run concurrently with that, his plea bargain includes a community programme over the next 8 months, which means that Tonali will need to return to Italy on 16 separate occasions and do essentially a community service, a community programme with young footballers over there. That is part of a rehab programme for the Italian. Now, this hasn't been officially announced by UEFA just yet, but as I say, we do have confirmation from the Italian Football Federation and their president Gabriele Gravina, who said that Tonali went above and beyond with his cooperation in this investigation, and as a result of that, it means that he has received a reduced suspension of 10 months plus those 8 months. The 8-month rehab programme. Had he not been quite so transparent and helpful, Tonali could have been facing a ban of up to 3 years from football. It's our understanding, thanks to our colleagues over in Sky Italy, that Tonali will still be able to train with his Newcastle United teammates and perhaps take part in behind closed doors friendlies during the course of his suspension, but no top level football for Tonali like we saw for him when of course he scored in his debut against Aston Villa just a couple of months ago here at St James's Park, and like last night here in the Champions League when he came off the bench as a second half substitute in the 1-0 defeat to Borussia Dortmund. So hammer blow for Newcastle as a club, hammer blow for the footballer as well, having to miss the next 10 months of footballing action. But it is the news we expected. We have been reporting for the last couple of days now that the talks have surrounded a 10-month ban for Tonali, and as I say, awaiting official confirmation from UEFA and from Newcastle United, but the Italian Football Federation coming out today and saying that that agreement is in place for him to serve that 10-month ban with the 8-month community programme to run concurrently.
And then getting to the Everton situation. Right now, they are in 16th. That's 7 points. And they are really being stared at and poured over about their possible breaches of financials and violations of FFP that could include a massive points penalty. Our friends at Sky Sports News discussed, and it could get really interesting.
It looks like as the Everton's profit and sustainability hearing for one alleged breach had the Premier League's case being put forward and the suggestion to the Independent Commission that they should consider a points deduction as a penalty. And the report is this could go as high as 12 points. I mean, that is similar to the EFL's position with all their financial fair play hearings. That their guidelines suggest up to a 12-point deduction, so that would be similar there. The Independent Commission, they will make their own decision. Both sides can, my understanding is both sides, Everton can make their suggestion, Premier League can make their suggestion, and then they will come to a decision. So, but 12 points or any points deduction, you would think the rest of the Premier League teams will be looking and watching carefully, because they will be expecting the Premier League to be doing this, because it's a test case. It's the first ever alleged breach hearing that we've had.
Well, yep, in this article, Miguel, it says Everton's case being heard by an independent commission after they recorded those losses of £304 million, well above the permitted amount of £105 million set out by the Premier League. Nonetheless, Miguel, how catastrophic would it be for Everton Football Club? And in that Telegraph piece, they've got a table of the Premier League which would see them rock bottom, 9 points from safety if that was implemented.
Oh, I mean, huge repercussions, potentially changing the face of the club, and to a certain degree the Premier League, given what it could potentially illustrate going forward about, say, the Manchester City case, which is much more complicated and could yet go on for much longer. But Everton's position in this is that they had allowances for the effects of COVID. I suppose we've been in a situation now where kind of Everton have been treading water for some time. It's actually been often not quite a miracle that they've stayed up, but they could have gone down in a few seasons. And you would think if it comes to this, and actually, the chatter last week was that it was expected to be a suspended point sentence. But this is the reports from today. Obviously, was just a firmer deduction or something much stronger. But this would surely, you would think, relegate them. That would have financial consequences. We wait to see what happens with the takeover. Although, of course, it's not even a certainty that the 777 planned purchase would go ahead. And then, of course, there's the issue of having to go through the owners and directors test. It really is uncharted waters for the club. One who has been kind of so top heavy for so long. And then, as we say, everyone's watching this because of what it might mean for the Manchester City case. Now, and again, like this is a story with so many recent strands of football going into it, not least the independent regulator.
Well, Miguel, just comment. We'll get to Martin in a moment because he's got a piece regarding the prospective new owners of Manchester City, of Everton, sorry. But let's talk about Manchester City quickly because in the Telegraph there's a follow-on piece from Tom Morgan. They said what Everton call means for City. In that piece, Morgan says that it's actually, to compare the two cases, is futile. Just what's your take on that situation because of the complexity of the City case versus Everton's situation?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. They're just not comparable in that way in terms of the nature of what's being looked at, and totally different in terms of complexity. I think the way one is relevant to the other is, as Martin was stated, and I think as a lot of the reporting today has said, the rest of the Premier League are going to be watching this because there is such a kind of, I suppose, a pressure for the Premier League to regulate, as they would say, to a satisfactory level with the Manchester City case. So, yeah, this is a sort of a test case in that regard. But equally then, of course, there's another pressure in all this, which is we've got the independent regulator coming in. And a lot of people in football think that the Premier League also wants to show that it can regulate itself and doesn't necessarily need an independent regulator. So there's a lot of the recent political themes that have been influencing football that are coming to a head in a story like this.
OK, well, let's get to Martin then. Martin, back page of your paper, The Times. 777 has plans for sanctions. Your byline, what can you tell us about this story for the prospective new Everton owners?
Yeah, so, I mean, if there was any sort of concerns at 777, if their takeover was approved, that they would sort of walk away if Everton was going to get a major points deduction. Well, my understanding, speaking to people with knowledge of the process, is that they have planned contingencies. If A, there's points deductions, B, Everton get relegated, it won't affect the takeover, but it will affect the price that they pay. So if Everton end up being relegated this season, then the amount that they would actually pay to Farhad Moshiri would be considerably less, as you would expect. But this is all built into the takeover agreement, is my understanding.
So if it was a 12-point deduction done today, Everton would be at -5 points, and they would be 10 points from safety, and they would also be 6 points away from Sheffield United, just to kind of give you an idea as to where things stand. Other gossip, rumor, innuendo, and news as we head into the weekend, what possibly to look out for when it comes to the Premier League. We'll get into all the matchups coming up in just a little bit. But, yeah, there's a chance, according to Eddie Howe, a high chance Tonali could feature despite the ban, because if it ain't on paper, it ain't applied. So we're going to keep an eye on all of that, and it could get really, really interesting when it comes to the availability of Sandro Tonali going forward right now when it comes to what Newcastle are looking forward to doing this weekend, set to play as it is all laid out for us when it comes to the Premier League. City have warned fans that their fans attending Sunday's derby at Old Trafford, where a minute's applause will be held for Sir Bobby Charlton. Anyone who misbehaves will be banned and reported to police. That goes in concert with some minors who were saying some unsavory things about the death of Sir Bobby Charlton. And they were found out on CCTV cameras. They do not know. It is anticipated that those two young individuals will not be at a match at the Etihad anytime soon, nor should they be. That's just, like I said, that's just me, but I don't think I am alone in that particular assessment of what you should and what you shouldn't do when it comes to showing respect. So we'll keep an eye on all of that going forward. Mauricio Pochettino is not happy with the decision to schedule Chelsea's trip to Wolves on Christmas Eve. It's his 23rd wedding anniversary, and he gets to travel to the Molineux. He's not going to spend the night of 23 in his house. Then for the 24th, the Argentine people, quoting him, "It's a really important night, hopes to arrive in time to celebrate." It is difficult because I think it's not easy to change. Pochettino said, "We need to accept we are in England and it is different to the rest of the world, but I need to adapt myself. And even if I'm not happy, I need to do my best," end quote. So keep an eye on that and what folks are thinking about the festive fixtures. Fans are mad enough as it is, considering that you're having to negotiate and navigate the traffic and travel situation. So we'll see what happens there. Pep Guardiola believes his upcoming opponents are always dangerous regardless of form. Doesn't matter to the managers, he says. Quote, and I have seen a few. They're always a tough opponent with the quality of the individual, the character of the momentum. They have the ability not to be on top and then just score goals. We know their quality, no doubt about that. And keep an eye on Jack Grealish and his availability. So we'll see what's going on. Erik ten Hag claims that his side is going in the right direction after the big win against Sheffield United, the hard-fought win, and then beating Copenhagen in Champions League 1-0 in the midweek after Andre Onana saved a last-minute penalty kick. So he believes that they're going in the right direction. So we'll see what is happening there going forward. Also on the board, it is let's get into the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups for the weekend and the matches coming up in the Premier League before we toss it to 3D for the week. Friday night football, Crystal Palace and Spurs. Selhurst Park, Spurs are a -135. Crystal Palace and the composites a +387. 4 matches on your Saturday. Chelsea hosting Brentford's the early one at 7:30 Eastern Time. Chelsea's a -147. Brentford is a +420. 10 o'clock, 2 matches, Arsenal and Sheffield United. It appears that Paul Heckingbottom could be sacked if they don't come up with a result against Arsenal. Chris Wilder is in the discussion now, so let's just bring back Chris Wilder as a part of the talk. Probably because you couldn't afford anybody else. Arsenal at a -833. Sheffield United north of +2225 to win. Bournemouth and Burnley, this is a big one for both of these teams. Cherries need full points to work their way up the table. Burnley needs full points to get out of the relegation zone. Bournemouth a +114. Draws a +268, and Burnley is a +237 at the Vitality. 12:30. Wolves at the Molineux are a +330 hosting Newcastle. Draws a +300. Newcastle's a -122. The other 5 matches are on Sunday. 9 o'clock Eastern, West Ham and Everton. West Ham is a +117. It appears that the front office at West Ham might be looking for replacements for David Moyes if this continues with their current form. Everton's a +231, by the way. Villa at Villa Park hosting Luton Town at a -357. Luton Town's basically a +970. Brighton at the Amex hosting Fulham at a -175. Fulham is a +450. Liverpool hosting Nottingham Forest. Great old rivalry in the top flight of English football. Liverpool a -357. Forest is a +950. And the Manchester Derby to finish it all up at 11:30 Sunday morning. Manchester United, Manchester City a -143 heading to Old Trafford. Manchester United is a +425. Your draw is a +303. It's that time where we get you ready for everything going on in Drew Dickinson's mind. It's time for his diatribe, time for the 3D.
3D! Yo, what's going on, everybody? My name is Drew Dickinson, and this is your weekly 3D. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to get right into it. You know, for a change, shockingly, Manchester United haven't negatively dominated the headlines, but after an exciting week of Champions League, the Jadon Sancho saga has brought just a little more information to the surface. And here's what we know, and this is coming from The Athletic. They said, issues over pressing pre-Arsenal, which we kind of already talked about a few weeks ago. There was also a video meeting between Ten Hag, the coaches, and Jadon Sancho to try and rectify. Apparently, players witnessed Sancho visibly dismiss Ten Hag, and things haven't changed. Ten Hag still wants a public apology. It's even been said that Sancho is banned from any first-team activities as far as, obviously, training, but this goes even further for, the cantina, weightlifting. He has been kept to the academy facilities. So as that saga continues, we will keep you up to date, but it's safe to say that a January exit is almost certain for the 23-year-old. We spoke enough on this, but I will say one more thing. Who's advising this kid? He's receiving horrible guidance. Like I said, he's 23 years old on incredibly huge wages, got so much promise. Rumors of Dortmund wanting him back. One thing about these United players is if you want to let them go, one thing that's going to cause a little bit of ruckus is going to be those wages. And that will play a factor anywhere that he goes, which will most likely be a loan spell in January. West Ham, they were even mentioned as a possible loan spell. We saw how good Jesse Lingard did a couple of years ago. So it could be a direction for Jadon Sancho. Like I said, we'll keep you up to date with more information as it comes out. And one more piece of United news. They released full accounts for 2022-2023. They had a record revenue at 648 million pounds. The previous high was in 2018-2019 when they were in the Champions League. Commercial revenues topping 300 million for the first time. Really, the number is 302.9 million pounds. Long-term debt still remains unchanged at 650 million pounds. And one thing that's exciting, you got to get a little win when you can as a United fan. No dividends paid to the Glazers. Oh, happy day. But we'll let that rest because we have an exciting weekend of Premier League action coming up. Matchweek 10 is here. And we have, like I said, quite the slate of games. The standings are a bit different this week. Tottenham sitting at the top of the league, followed by Manchester City, Arsenal, and Liverpool, who round out the top four. My beloved Manchester United move up the table to 8th. Meanwhile, Chelsea yet to find an identity, still sitting at 10th. Mauricio Pochettino still yet to figure it out. We'll see if Todd Bowley goes to the checkbook in January. And at the bottom four, it currently reads Burnley, Bournemouth, Sheffield United, and I'm missing one. I believe it's Luton Town. Yes, it is Luton Town. My apologies. But yeah, this weekend I'm, like I said, super excited about all the matchups for sure. Want to talk about our weekly battle at the bottom. Burnley in 18th place with 7 points. Welcome 19th place Bournemouth to Turf Moor. A win for either of these teams would see them out of the relegation zone for now. Newcastle, who this past week in Champions League saw their first home defeat in a European competition in over 20 years. That was back when Captain America for Manchester United, Bobby Robson's side, were beaten 2-0 by Barcelona back in March of 2003. So you can definitely see, and you'll see Newcastle trying to bounce back as they travel to the Molineux Stadium to take on the struggling Wolverhampton Wolves. And, of course, the big one, Sunday afternoon, the Manchester Derby. Manchester United welcome Manchester City to Old Trafford. United needed some heroics to keep their Champions League campaign alive this season. Saw an unfamiliar goal from the big slab head himself, Harry Maguire, who really has played his way back into this squad. It's crazy to think just a year ago, he saw Luke Shaw come in and play center back, lost his captain's band, just was dwindling away on the bench at United, but he wanted to stay, fight for a spot. And, you really got to give it up to Harry Maguire. Last month, he has really played fantastic for this Manchester United team. And a fun stat, I don't think United have lost a game in the last 15 times that Maguire has started. We'll leave it at that. We don't want to get too excited. But also to add to the Champions League excitement, penalty kick given by the referee against Manchester United, McTominay, the McTerminator, with a handball in the 94th minute. But the man, Andre Onana, came up huge, saved a penalty at the death to keep United's 1-0 victory in the Champions League, and their Champions League season remains alive. Big 3 points here in the Champions League for United. Manchester City, they handled Young Boys 3-1 this week in the Champions League, and they'll look to keep their winning ways alive. But I will say this, Erling Haaland, who? That's right. This week, Rasmus Højlund makes a name for himself in Manchester. He has a goal, and United win 1-0. You heard it here first. I'm not going to go in any further than that. We're going to stamp it just like that. Manchester United defeat Manchester City 1-0 in the Manchester Derby, and Manchester, as it should, will remain red. Well, that's going to conclude another week's edition of the 3D. Thanks again to the Soccer Down Here, easy for me to say. Thanks for the Soccer Down Here crew once again for having me. Big shout out to John Nelson, Jason Longshore. We'll talk next week. Enjoy the weekend. Cheers, everyone. Oh, and just one more thing. Don't ever forget, it's always just 2 3D.
As always, it's great to have Drew bringing his perspective, somewhat colored in Manchester United red. This weekend, I don't want to be near him because of the Manchester Derby. We'll see what happens there. So thanks to Drew. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to all of you guys for listening to another round of Prem and Proper here on the SDH Network. Enjoy your matches because there's going to be some interesting storylines coming across. We'll be back at you once again next week with all the activity of what's going on in the top flight overseas.